A warm welcome to our first Magpie Circle podcast show of 2022. A happy new year to one and all. And if it's good enough for our boys on the pitch to battle through COVID, it's good enough for us here on the Magpie Circle to do the same. Joining us tonight, Les Bradd, with COVID, Notts County's record club scorer in his 70s. Les, you look remarkably well. Sorry you couldn't watch the game yesterday, but hope the result has given you a bit of a tonic.
I took a lateral flow test, as I always do when I'm going out, and I was just gobsmacked when I saw the two red lines. I thought, it can't be right. I got no symptoms, and I have had a cough occasionally, but I've done pretty well today, so I'm not really sure what's going on. I've ordered a PCR test, and that should come in the post tomorrow, and we'll see where we go from there, Paul. But I do feel well.
Les, thank you very much. And obviously, we all wish you a safe recovery. In joke for all our flock on the Magpie Circle. I hope your cuckoo clock gets it, though, because that is a pesky little thing, your cuckoo clock. So if that can get COVID, not too many of us will be too worried about it.
You've just missed it.
Welcome. Now, of course, fantastic entertainment. Almost forgot we were in the National League for 90 minutes. Lots of banter among both sets of fans. And delighted to say at short notice, Nathan Salt from the Wrexham podcast, RobRyanRed, is able to join us. Now, unlike most forms of social media, which is the Wild West, we pride ourselves on respect, treating people properly, and we're going to have a proper chat with Nathan for the first half of the show. So any hassle here from our flock, I'm sure there won't be, directed towards him. It will be yellow and red cards, and I'm sure Nathan doesn't wish to be reminded about red cards given what happened yesterday. But Nathan, very warm welcome, and delighted you were able to come over, I think with your dad yesterday. Sorry about the result.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It was one of the games I'd circled in the calendar. It felt like a huge game, and I spoke to a lot of people that went. It was it got to a point where the club had to put out a statement about ticket touts for a 5th division game. So it just showed you the level of interest in these two teams and the size of the game. It felt like you needed to be there. Myself and my dad went, as you say, and I enjoyed it for pre-match. I very much enjoyed it going around Nottingham, and I enjoyed it for about 5 or 6 minutes, and then kind of everything came crashing back down to earth for us, I think. And a real shame for Harry Lennon, because he's been up there as one of our players of the season. Came in, a bit underwhelming for a lot of fans. They thought he's injury prone. Southend couldn't wait to get rid of him. And Southend fans were saying how poor he would be. He's been brilliant for us. So to see, and I think as well, he goes off. We've had to abandon the back three immediately. And our wing backs, I have to say, credit to your wide players, because I thought they quickly realised how weak our fullbacks were defensively and punished us. And that's how you get the first goal with the cross. And that's really where we had no answer.
Yeah, we'll be talking to Les a little bit in the programme, because I know he's been very impressed with our on loan right wing back, Jaden Richardson from Nottingham Forest. And although Les couldn't see the actual action yesterday, certainly think he was one of our star performers yesterday. While we're just chewing the fat a little bit, let's just get from our flock. Who do we think was yesterday's man of the match? Sponsors went, I think, for Matty Palmer. Carl Wootton got a couple of goals. Jaden Richardson looked very dangerous down the right. Who do we think was MOM? Flash that onto your writers and screens. Let's see who you think was MOM for us. Nathan, so clearly it was a very emotive game. An awful lot of things happened. We've got all the banter going on social media. The referee, look, every team thinks the referees, particularly the Football League clubs in the National League, have a low estimation of the referee. But I believe there are some stats floating around. The referee for yesterday is no stranger to giving red cards to your players, yeah?
No, I've pulled it up, as I mentioned it before. He's Paul Marsden, who we had yesterday. That was his 5th Wrexham game that he's done in his refereeing career, that he's done for Wrexham. In that time, he's shown 4 red cards in those 5 games, 3 of which have gone to Wrexham players.
That is.
He's also given 4 penalties in those 5 games. So, you can appreciate that every time he comes up on the team sheet, there's a trepidation because he's very quick with his card. And look, it like you say, you could argue on the flip side, it evened out later in the game. He gives a penalty to us, and it evens out. But it's often, yeah. I mean, you could say everyone has a mistrust of referees, and I see people on a weekly basis complain about Premier League refereeing. So you can imagine, come the 5th division, what those same Premier League fans would think of 5th division. But yeah, Paul Marsden in particular is a real bugbear for Wrexham fans. Maybe we're just being a bit precious, but he's definitely one that gets a lot of bad stick from Wrexham fans for sure.
Incredible stat. I must admit, I do like to defend referees because it is a very thankless task. And in the coming weeks, we'll be having a good friend of mine is Howard Webb, and they don't come much bigger and better than him. And we're going to have him on the show to discuss all things refereeing. Howard's a big Rotherham fan. Used to come with his dad and watch Notts County, watch Rotherham come play at Meadow Lane. I'm sure he went to Wrexham at some point as well when he was growing up, Nathan. So we're going to have a good chat with Howard about refereeing across the board. So one to watch out for later in January. Man of the match yesterday. Enfol says Ed Francis. Kel Foster says Richardson. Nick G says Francis. Pythagoras says Pato. Dale Pike says Ed Francis. Chris Gosling. Between Cameron and Francis, Jaden Fisher, Pato. Ian Birchinall, I was split between Jaden Richardson and Ed Francis. Max Seth says Francis or Pato. Thick Woofers 24 says Cameron. Andrew Blatherwick, Francis. Kel Foster, Pato deserves a mention, penalty save and everything that came. Tim Lynham, Ed Francis for me. David Shorter, Palmer and Vincent. Ellie Elvey, Francis had a great game. Patterson too, but I'd have given it to Richardson. Kel Foster, any one man of the match for me. Catherine Simkis, Lacey, Ian Birchinall. In fairness, I thought he was going to say the ref was man of the match. He's just about to say referee was spot on with both penalties yesterday. Leslie, just want to pick up on the lone player because we had this conversation even before yesterday's game. It's not a criticism, but often the way Notts play, we have a ball a lot of the time. We don't always turn back fours on a regular occasion, get to the byline, push balls in. We certainly did that yesterday, and I think you have a bit of a theory about what Jaden Richardson brings to Notts.
Yeah, I think yesterday was his 3rd game, wasn't it? And prior to that, he'd 2 assists. He certainly helped, shall I say, Kyle Wootton. I've noticed that Kyle Wootton seems to have a thinking relationship with Jaden when he goes down that right-hand side and he's getting in positions to score goals. I think early in the season, Kyle came under a bit of criticisms, probably for not being in position, probably missing the chances occasionally that were coming his way. But I don't think we were getting enough balls into the box for him. And I've spoken with Ian Birchinall when I'm down at the club, and he tells me how hard they're working on the training ground to get better. To release wide men and get balls into the box. And maybe all what we're seeing now is probably the fruits from all the training sessions. It's coming into place, and they are looking a lot like they're going to. I think the ambition is to score 4 goals every game, and they're creating that sort of number of chances now, aren't they? So I think everybody has to be part of that plan. I don't think you just pick one out, but certainly Richardson has caught the eye of the last few games.
Yeah, and that's been picked up by Ian Birchinall. Jaden should have had a second yesterday. Plays like that, he'll get more. Need to get a loan extension for him. I've seen the comments from Ian Birchinall. He's obviously very keen to extend the loan. Challenge, I guess, with any loan player in the January transfer window is clubs clearly want their players to develop. Normally, that means playing to the highest standard possible. Jaden in the past has already played in the Football League. I have heard stories that Forest have loaned Jaden to Notts to get him some match practice, put him in the shop window a little bit for potentially a Football League move. However, you've got to counterbalance that with his getting regular football. He's a Nottingham lad. He's clearly enjoying it here. I certainly think we have our work cut out to retain him, but hopefully we can. Nathan, I want to come back to with the contentious decisions, all the rest of it. Let's just flag up the Notts' third goal. Over the line, not over the line. If I'm being brutally honest, I'm not sure how anybody in the crowd, okay, unless you were bang on the edge of the pavish section towards the top, so you are directly in line. None of us know, okay? None of us know. What? Please tell me the Wrexham fans' view of it. But what interested me a little bit was that when the ball was headed off the line or behind the line, I looked straight across to the linesman, and the linesman used to, and I may be wrong here, the linesman used to kind of like put his flag across his chest or whatever, denote it across the line or carry on. Now, the linesman or assistant referee did nothing. And it seemed 2 or 3 seconds before the referee then gave the goal. Now, what I would like, it would be interesting to hear from the referees in the National League. I think they're mic'd up now, or there's a buzzer on the flag. So whether there is some form of communication between the assistant ref and the ref to say on the headpiece, that ball crossed the line, the ref says, are you sure? Yeah, you can give the goal kind of thing. I kind of think that's what must have happened. But if I don't know, and we're kind of in the profession, I do think there needs to be a lot more education around these situations so we understand. Because I don't know whether the ref's given that goal, whether the linesman has. Don't really know.
No, I don't have any answers for you. I'm not sure myself on kind of the system in which they use. I think it was just really kind of apathetic in the away end because we were so far away. We obviously had no idea if it crossed the line or not. We're obviously going to say it isn't. Yeah. Fans behind the goal will say it is. That's just the way it is. So I didn't read too much into that. I hadn't seen it back. It was interesting that a few people who work inside the club were very quick to point out to me, after that they'd seen replays and it definitely hadn't. But for me, the game was already lost at the red card. It sounds a bit silly because it was so early, but I just felt we've been so consistent playing that back three for our sins, really. It's not worked in some games, it hasn't in others. I've had such limited experience going to the back four, and as I said, I don't trust either fullback defensively. They're great going forward, as you saw. Reece Johnson score a stunner. And Bryce, there was also a lot of talk on social media about a foul on the far touchline nearer towards the dugout on Bryce Hosanna. I can't remember who the Notts player was, but Wrexham after was sort of looking for a red card on that, which I wasn't necessarily sold on.
That was an Eli Sam tackle, which got him a yellow card 2 or 3 minutes.
I wasn't necessarily sold on the red card there for me. But it was a tough challenge. But that wasn't a red for me from where I was, obviously on the other side. It's I think that the biggest frustration we cling to the decisions. The biggest frustration is we've lost to a promotion rival. That's the big frustration because we went to Grimsby and got turned over there. We got lucky at Halifax where we, 94th, 5th minute winner by Paul Mullen. We haven't really got many wins against promotion rivals. Chesterfield at home, we really struggled. It was more the fact that we ended up getting turned over by Notts when we sort of went there on the back of a good run. We went in there thinking you were ravaged by COVID, which you were. And I think we kind of maybe set ourselves up for a bit of a fall, just going in there a little bit, we've beaten these smaller teams. We're the real deal sort of thing now. And it brought us crashing back down to earth. But, yeah.
It's interesting, fans, because at the minute, there is a view, and you can't really always judge this, but, social media are awash at the minute that Ian Birchnell is going to succeed Jurgen Klopp as manager in Liverpool. We're going to win the league by a mile. Yeah. We've got the best 2 players in the National League. We're going to get £1 million for Ruben Rodriguez, etc., 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 etc. So we are right now really, really hyped up. Yeah. Yeah. Listening to yourself, it seems that you are perhaps not at this moment in time, despite all the investment, not necessarily as getting carried away with the situation. I've looked at the bookies charts today. So You are third favourites to win the league, 5-1. We're fourth favourites at 8-1. Chesterfield are 7-4 the favourites. Where are Wrexham fans this season with this, given the huge investment, the Hollywood razzmatazz of it all? Do you view anything other than promotion as a failure or not this season?
I think every season that the Wrexham don't go up is a failure. More so now that you've actually got money to spend. You know, I thought it was a failure under fan ownership when they didn't get up. So all these, the thing is as well, as great as it is, the ownership and what they've done, and you know, conversations I've had with Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, they're in it for the long haul, they say, and I believe them. I remember speaking to Parkinson in his introductory press conference. And I said, "Do you think it's a gamble to drop to the National League? Because if you don't get out, it's a suffocating division. We've been here. This is our 14th year, as I said the last time I came on, and we're still haunted by 98-point seasons and playoff final defeats and XYZ." So I said to him, "Do you feel it's a gamble?" And he sort of scoffed at my question and said he doesn't see it as a gamble at all. You know, and I think he's come to realize just how hard this division is to get out of. You know, you look at Chesterfield, and someone said to me, "Well, they didn't play that well against Kings Lynn, but they still won 1-0." And it's about just grinding out these wins. And I think for him, Parkinson is feeling the pressure, and it'll all come down for me. The mood in the fan base is it will all come down to what happens in January. The key part of where the game was lost for me yesterday was in that midfield. You know, people talking about Matty Palmer, or you know, kind of your midfield had a lot more control in that game than ours did. Even when it was in those early stages, 11v11 for me. You know, we've just given Jordan Davis a new 3.5-year deal, but there's no base to that midfield. You can't just have attacking players in that midfield. It doesn't work. You can't remold an attacking midfielder into a defensive anchor. It doesn't work like that. And we've managed to cobble through to January with the midfield we have. But if there's not reinforcements, then I don't see how we go up playoffs. And that sounds pessimistic, I know, but I just don't see it. I've seen enough teams now to know that we are far too exposed going the other way. So fine going one way when we're attacking, but we're too exposed going the other way. And I think you saw that, especially down to 10, but even at 11, I think we looked uneasy in that area.
Yeah, it's interesting. And let's bring Les in. I'm putting aside cup results, trophy, FA Cup. Believe it or not, that's the first time we've won 3 games on the spin this season. So we hopefully go for 4 at Dover. We took, I think it was 15 points from our first 10 games. And in our next batch of 10, we've taken 23. And clearly, 9 of those 23 have come in the last 10 games. I think we always say, Les, and you would know this back from your days with the Helsing era of Jimmy Cyril, for a team to win a title, we're not just talking playoffs here, for a team to win a title, you have to rack up 6, 7, 8 wins on the bounce at some point in the season. Do you think now we're in a good position to be able to push on from here? Because on the face of it, Dover away is the side you will probably pick for your next game to get a result.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was a fantastic victory yesterday. Bearing in mind the players that we'd missed and a reshuffle. The last time that happened, it started a week where we lost 3 games: Altrincham, Halifax, and Woking. And we picked ourselves up from there. As you've just said, we've gone on and won those games from there. Thinking back to the success that I had as a player at the teams that played in under Jimmy Cyril, we weren't looking to win leagues in September and November and December. Jimmy always used to talk to us about the league season being a horse race, and coming round the final bend was January, and you had to be in contention coming round that final bend for the straight, and that was the sprint, and that's when it was essential to win those games on the run that you're talking to me about, asking me about. Necessary. We need to keep in there until it comes, I don't know, March time, early March, we've got that month where we play all the top clubs again, don't we? Is it March?
Yeah.
And if we can stick in there, then I think our final 8 to 9 matches looks winnable. In saying that, we've tended to drop points against the clubs down at the bottom end, haven't we? We've always done well against the top clubs. So no, things are going well at the moment, and great credit to everybody behind the scenes, Ian and all his backroom staff, and all the players as well. And as I say, to go into that match yesterday with the players that had lost with COVID and to put on a performance like that, they deserve a lot of credit. Sorry, Paul, I'll just finish, just come in as well. We've also been talking about penalties, in the game, think back to Dagenham last year. After how long had the game been going? We'd scored very early on.
Yeah.
And they got a penalty and the goalkeeper got sent off. And we saved that. Mike Doyle went in goal, saved that, and we went on to win that game 3-1 with 10 men.
Yeah.
With about 80 minutes. And it just shows what you can do if you get the bit between your teeth and you can grind out results. And I'm not saying it can happen every game, but that was something special as well last year, wasn't it?
Indeed, it was. I just want to, because Nathan is a professional sports journalist. That's his job. Just to make that clear. If people are saying, "Oh, how come he's speaking to these people?" So you've got the Hollywood owners, and you've had a chance to speak to, the big boys. I don't know if you were aware of this. This was pointed out to me by a member of our Magpie Circle flock, that Alexander and Christoph Reitz, our Danish owners, young brothers, had set a company up on the Isle of Man, registered, that was something like Wrexham FC Holdings or something like this, which was clearly a shell company that would have been looking at purchasing Wrexham. Yeah, they were obviously looking at a variety of clubs. Don't know if you knew that or not. Have you been able to get to the bottom, and are you satisfied professionally, of why and how these Hollywood A-listers settle on Wrexham? Because you and I would think that 95% of all in League One and League Two are up for sale. That's the reality of the season. 95% of them. And we know how difficult it is to get out, you know better than us, of getting out of the National League to the Football League. And clearly there is if not a huge gulf between the best teams in the National League and the Football League, there's a huge gulf in administration, operation, professionalism, and all the rest of it. So have you had a satisfaction? Do you kind of get as to why they would take a National League club, given their stellar reputation, and presumably they've got a few quid to burn?
I'll try and paint the picture as best as I've been told it in the process. So what it was they talk about it in a lot of American sports terms, draft board and XYZ. But imagine a big board with lots of different categories, lots of columns, fan base, price, ground, capability to expand the ground, kind of commercial opportunity, loads of different things, and kind of the area, the wealth of the area that they wanted to regenerate areas. So they approach clubs that, from my understanding, they approach clubs such as Hartlepool, and there was some talk about, were they going in for Port Vale and these kind of teams. They've never been public about which teams they went for. Hartlepool, I know Hartlepool were one of the ones that I'm pretty sure was almost a definite. And the Hartlepool said that they weren't interested in an American consortium, which obviously later turned out to be Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds. But yeah, they just said that Wrexham, every time you ask anyone at the club, they just say that Wrexham scored highly in various areas. And I think if you look at it, yes, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go for a fifth division team when it's so difficult to get out. If you've just gone for a League Two team with those two behind it, you could get TikTok and all these other sponsors. They're not coming for Wrexham. Well, you do a documentary at any of these clubs. I don't know if there was a novelty element to it. Just being a team in Wales. Basically the only team in the region. There's no immediate kind of other kind of team in North Wales that's rivaling you. You can grow that fan base right across all the way to Anglesey, which some people do come to the games from right to the coast. And also, people in Wales can be very prideful about the language and, the dragon and that sort of thing. So like when you see Rob McElhenney speaking Welsh, again, in America, that's a big novelty for them. That's a bit different to, I don't know, just picking up a team in England in, say, League Two. So have I had a satisfactory answer? That's as best I got. That's as best as I got from anyone. They basically did one giant poll and Wrexham scored highest. It wasn't like there was any kind of love or connection to Wrexham. It was just a scoring exercise, really, a numbers game, I think.
It's a very comprehensive and plausible answer, Nathan. As an individual, I'm not sure I buy it. I think it would be an interesting question, and sincerely hope that Notts and Wrexham both go up, because we have good owners that are spending lots of money and clearly want their club to do well. I just wonder if both sets of owners would say in a year or two's time, if they've not got their respective clubs up, if they had seriously underestimated just how difficult it is to get out of this league. Numerically alone, one automatic, compared to if you're buying a League Two club, you've got 3 automatic. So instantly you've got 1/3 of the chance.
I think you look at you look at League Two this season, and with all due respect to Oldham, I mean, they're being run abysmally. Fans getting banning orders for negative opinions. I think that's now been revoked, but that was a big story about the owner giving banning orders out to fans just because they were being negative about the team and the results, and there's been all sorts. So imagine being in League Two where there's only 2 relegation spots and you've got certain clubs being run terribly. It would be very, very difficult to end up going down, whereas the other side, it's essentially title or bust for you think. I was having a chat to somebody and said, Notts, Chesterfield, Stockport and Wrexham all got huge ambition and will want to invest, and especially Stockport, Wrexham and Chesterfield, they want to invest heavily in January. I'm not sure about, Notts' kind of financial commitment or what they'll do in January, but, 3 of those, they won't all go up. Maybe none of them will go up. It could be Boreham Wood and Bromley for all we know, or someone else. So, that is very difficult for these teams to swallow, because if 2 or 3 of those don't go up, the next season doesn't get any easier, because then, then Stockport will still be there spending money. And also they can't spend forever. Wrexham are spending money at the minute, but documentary will come out. If that ceases for next season, we don't know if it will carry on forever and ever. So it's of vital importance that Wrexham find a way to get over the line. Do I think we will at the minute? Like I say, as presently constructed, Wrexham are not going back to the Football League. That can all change in 1 or 2 signings. Certain people joking of whether Ruben Rodriguez, whether we can put in some sort of offer for him. I think we just want to buy rival players to make them worse rather than make ourselves better. But there's a lot of talk on our kind of pages about, weakening of rivals. Will Kyle Wootton go? We don't know these things. Will he go? Will Ruben Rodriguez go? Will Joe Spara go? I spoke to someone close to him at Solihull, and he's in the mix for maybe getting a move in January. So we're as interested in who rivals let go and sign as we are whoever we bring in. That's as interesting to us, because I think it's going to be a key month in determining who sort of has that squad to go and get 6, 7, 8 games, as you said to Les.
Okay, we need to let you go, Nathan, because you are on work's time. Just want to wrap up with one final question for you. Who would your money be on getting the automatic spot?
My money would be on Chesterfield. I was really impressed with them when I just like Shamanga a lot. I think he just is in that kind of purple patch form. What is it, 18 in 19 league games or something like that? Yeah, I'm expecting them to go out of the FA Cup at the weekend to Chelsea. That's hardly a take.
There's a brave bet for you, mate. Non-league Chesterfield to lose at Premier League.
At Premier League Chelsea, I think they'll probably just lose that. So, and I don't think they'll. Are they still in the FA Trophy? If they are,
no, they made a strategic withdrawal.
There you go. So for them, I think they'll go out of the FA Cup. They've withdrawn from the FA Trophy, and they'll go all in on the league week to week. and I do expect them to invest in January as well, even if they're asking fans for the frost covers. And I've just got a funny feeling about Dagenham still. In that playoff hunt, I don't know. I should really be looking at Notts, Stockport, or Wrexham, but I look at Dagenham as some kind of dark horse. If you want a dark horse pick, that's who I think maybe could upset the apple cart a bit.
Nathan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. As always, this forum, and I know your forum as well, we can have a proper, rational, reasoned debate that is informative to both sides, rather than the anonymous numpties always on social media. Nathan, thank you very much indeed.
Well, good luck for the rest of the season. Good luck for the rest of the season.
You know
I was really impressed yesterday.
I really hope I'm wrong. I wonder if we might be facing each other in the playoffs, you know.
I would not enjoy that. I don't think I'll enjoy that.
As long as we get that referee, who is it? Paul Marsden.
Paul
Marsden, he does both legs. I think we might get through it.
No worries. Well, good luck for the rest of the season, and I'll be keeping an eye on your results, no doubt.
And you, Nathan. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Leslie, right. We've got a lot to get through. So let's just read out a few comments, and then I want to talk a little bit about. There was me thinking I was unlucky travelling to Kings Lynn and not seeing the game, but at least I saw yesterday. Whereas you've done the double. You've got all the way to Kings Lynn and come back and not seen a ball kicked, and then on the day of the Wrexham game, you've gone down with COVID. Just hold and compose your thoughts a minute, and let's just read out. And because it's a big audience tonight, so thank you very much. And there's a load to get through. And I didn't really want to read some of these out while we've got our Wrexham friend dogs. I don't want to be disrespectful. Kyle Motson says you can have all the money in the world at the end of the day. If you don't have the right ingredients, you can't bake the cake. Lee Revo, I don't think we are hyped up. He's talking about Notts fans in general. I disagree, Paul. Notts fans are sensible, albeit the odd one on social media. Nick G, Paul, we've been in this league 3 years. If we don't go up this season, it's only going to get harder. Certainly wouldn't disagree with you. Gary Wardle, possibly true, Nick G, but we are just getting better. Lee Revo, if we don't go up, it's not the end of the world. It would be for me for a few weeks, I can assure you. We are here because we were rubbish for years, simple as that. We should not expect anything. Wrexham are a good example. I disagree. You've got to expect your team to win. No point supporting the team otherwise. Max Seth was on about Dover tickets, but it's pay on the gate, so don't worry. I will be going to Dover. Not sure how many more are. Come up and have a chat. Kyle Motson adds, he's obviously not like Wrexham very much. Wrexham remind me of us in the League 2 relegation season. Huge money spent without any real clear direction. Nick G, Defo getting better. The midfield are gelling, which has always been a weak point. Brins and Richardson pushing forward, we fear no one, and have players that can infill for injuries and suspension. Mark Hamilton adds, have Dover cut the grass? Yes, crikey, it was a long grass when we were last down there. Gary Wardle, Nick G, to everyone. The whole way this result was achieved, missing players, reliance on a questionable squad, COVID not cancelling has made it almost ridiculous not to buy into Notts' current philosophy. Pythagorean need football regulator to make EFL 3 an order. I think we'd all like to see EFL 3, but whether we will for a foreseeable future, I'm not so sure. One or two people saying nice things about Nathan, and good to have him on. Andrew Blatherwick, anyone down to 11th could feasibly make a move forwards and push for a promotion place. Who's the Sheffield United lad that we're apparently interested in? Zach Brunt. I believe there is definite interest from Notts in him. He's been at Southend. There are others, including Football League clubs as well. And just to kind of tidy up principles of players being loaned out. As a rule of thumb, there are two principles applied by the parent club when loaning players out. One is the development of the player. Two is money. Development of the player will be based around that player playing at that club. So the bigger clubs do not want to loan a player out to another club further down the pyramid if all they're going to do is train with them. They want them to play competitive senior men's football. So many deals are now structured whereby the player basically has to play for the other club. If he doesn't, they could be recalled. There are incentives placed so that if you pay 100%, or if you play him every game, then you don't have to pay as much percentage of his salary. If you don't play him much, you have to pay his whole salary. So there are all kinds of incentives, and clearly something like Sunderland are very pleased with Anthony Patterson and the way that he is developing at Notts. If we look back a year or so, I think it's no secret that Sheffield United weren't very pleased that Sam Graham, you remember him at centre-half, Harold Bomber Graham, the boxer's son, wasn't playing. And so as a result, Sheffield end up hooking him back. So I think there's going to be a lot of musical chairs going on with the loan market, but Zach Brunt is definitely on the radar. That's a great point from Craig Simmons. Surprised not to see Michael Doyle named on the bench yesterday. Great point. Thought of that one. Great point. Anyway, thank you for waiting patiently, Leslie. So it's fair to say, when it comes to watching Notts County, you have had an absolute stinker of a Christmas, haven't you? New Year.
Well, I was excited last week, Saturday, Christmas Day. Decided that we'd travel in the car with my youngest son. The eldest son was going on the coach. He was happy to mix it. I picked Tim up at 11:45. It was a damp morning, not a lot of rain, and off we set off for Kings Lynn. And on the way down, never in the discussion was, might the game be on or off?
No.
So we arrived at Kings Lynn. Yeah, it had been damp at times. No heavy rain. We parked up and we found the nearest pub to the ground, got in there. It was quiet. There was a mixture of Notts fans and Kings Lynn fans, and the banter was good, and no word was mentioned of a possibility of it being off. And then Tim looked on his phone and said, there's a pitch inspection. I think he said this at 1:50. We all went, what? And then just after 2, it was called off. So, yeah, driven all the way down there, had a pint, and we got in the car and then came all the way back. And when I started to reflect, when all the news came out about the groundsman at Kings Lynn packing up a month ago, that they didn't have any ground staff, that the council come in once a week and maintain, and, nobody had been in the ground on the morning to say there might be a problem. I heard from one of the backroom staff whose family live in Norwich that it had thrown it down with rain in Norfolk through Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and I just got to thinking, this is non-league. This should not happen. There should have been whoever's responsibility it is, and the National League obviously don't want any responsibility with it. They're not coming out saying anything. The referee, he's arrived, 1:45, taking a look, and in his mind it's off at that stage. What is going on? You've got nearly 1,000 people traveling from Nottingham, and to go through that, I just think is absolutely ludicrous when, we could have been forewarned that there's highly likely the game is going to be called off, and then you can make the decision what you want to do. But to travel, and then less than an hour before the kickoff, they say it's off, is just ludicrous. So yeah, that was a great start to the Boxing Day and the week, and then I was really, really looking forward to yesterday. Big clash. It'd been a great game at Wrexham. We got a great point there, and listening to the manager this week has been heartwarming. How he wanted us to play. He knew there was key players going to be missing. And I would imagine several managers in that league and even leagues above would want the game called off, as we're hearing, in the press now. And no, he wanted to get that game played. And he did it by motivating those lads that haven't played in the first team for me. I don't want to call the game off when I've got these lads fighting in the wing, to come in and show themselves. And I thought, what a great way of picking a team and with new faces, and they're going to come in and show it. And as I say, I didn't see the game, but from what I've heard from my two sons, it's one of the best games they've seen this season. And credit to everybody. I think everybody, the fans that turned up there to shout them on, the lads that played, I think it's wonderful. So I have missed it badly this week.
Have you missed it badly enough, Les, to go to Dover?
No. That is just a trip too far. I'm sorry. Especially to go all that way down there and get it called off as well.
Well, I tell you what, the thoughts crossed my mind. I should be going down on the train. The only good thing about that trip to Dover is there's the high-speed javelin trains go from St Pancras straight to Dover. Takes an hour. Unbelievable. 1 hour. You can actually get to Dover quicker than if you were going to Wimbledon, Crystal Palace, Maidenhead, Aldershot, any of them. The downside is when you get to the station, Les, it's 2 miles up a ruddy big hill, and it feels like 5 miles. And I like to walk, but it is an interminable walk. Oh, dear me. An interminable walk. Uphill all the way. And it's kind of...
You'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there. But it's cut into the side of a cliff. But what does worry me is there's a big cliff. So is all the water going to pour down the side? And Jim Parmenter, who's not obviously a mate of us, is he, given the stick we've given him? I don't want him doing a Stephen Cleave at bloody 1:30, because I'll already be there and having walked the 2 mile up that road. But hey, I just want to square away Kings Lynn. Here's what I would do. As you say, and this, I think some people say, oh, I'm not too worried about not staying in the National League for a year or two. We're winning games. I'm enjoying it. For me, Kings Lynn is a symptom of why we just have to get out of this damn league, right? Because this bears no relation to the professionalism of the Football League. If I'm the National League and I see that postponement, I'd say to Kings Lynn, right, you have got 24 hours on the National League desk, 9 o'clock following morning. I want a 1-page report from Kings Lynn. Why was this game off? What did you do? I want a 1-page report from the referee. Were you told to get there? Were you not told to get there? What time did you get there? Yeah. What were your thoughts? And I want a 1-pager from Notts. What were you told? Were you told it was in doubt, etc.? At that morning, as chief exec, I'd spend an hour reading them 3 reports, right? And that should get you to the truth of the matter pretty quickly. And it may not be in the statute books at the National League at the minute. But I can't believe Kings Lynn haven't broken a rule or two there, or somebody's broken a rule or two. And I'd put a fine in straight away. Straight away. And if it was Kings Lynn's fault, okay, I'd say, right, 50% of your gate, that's your fine. Because then that reduces the incentive for clubs to fiddle it. I say 50% of your gate, you're fined, and of that fine, X is going to back to compensate travelling supporters, right? If it was the referee, if the referee was supposed to have been there at 9 o'clock and can't be, didn't think, you thought I'll be okay to turn up 12, then he needs to be dropped, right, from a few games. And if it was not, so I can't see how it would be Notts' fault, but whatever, right? And then I'd issue a press statement by lunchtime the following day, done, dusted. Whereas it is, we all say this. Stephen Cleave says, I offered to play you again the Tuesday evening, and yet Notts didn't want to play, he tells the local media, and we at Notts say, actually, that's a load of rubbish, and all the rest of it. I'd just have transparency, and I'd take all the wriggle room out, because I'm 58, and you've, Les, 30 years ago, it wasn't uncommon to travel to a game, right, and have it called off, right?
Yeah, but
in the modern era, supporters expect, you've got to treat supporters with more respect than you did 20, 30 years ago. You've got social media. Yeah. So these things can be communicated. And, I'd have liked to have seen a lot of pressure put on Kings Lynn to have already had this rearranged game sorted. I just think that it smacks of rank amateurism. And I'm in a fortunate position where, there and back on Boxing Day, the petrol money don't bankrupt me. Okay. For a lot of people, I saw something from Kimberly Walston, all the rest of it. She's run a coach. She's got a taxi because there's no public transport on Boxing Day to get to the coach. It's probably cost Kim and people like that over £100 on a Boxing Day when they've already spent a lot of money. And I think that just shows, irrespective of whether it's Kings Lynn or whoever, scant regard. And I'm also disappointed that on Boxing Day, you've got 2,500 Nottingham Forest fans going to Middlesbrough, and you got 1,000 Notts County fans going to Kings Lynn. Surely one of our two clubs should have been at home on that day. Surely. Terrible. Nottingham, with two professional football clubs, both of us off all over the place. Clearly, we both can't be at home on Boxing Day, but I just think more needs to be done to look after supporters now. And we can't just say, well, years ago, games used to be postponed and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, it was much like that in the old leagues. That, like you've just said, you've been, and I, as a player, went to matches, and you got there, and it was called off. But it was generally called off through extreme weather conditions building up to it. You know, that was the issue. The issue to me here is that you know, it's 3 years ago that we got relegated, and maybe at that time the National League, how many, shall we say, big professional clubs did they have in the league? We're now involved in a league where we just talked about Wrexham, gates of 9,000, Chesterfield, similar, ourselves, similar, Southend, similar. You know, I looked at the attendances yesterday in the second division, and virtually all of the games, there were 2,000 or 3,000, nowhere near what we're getting in the National League. The question I say, do the National League want to become more professional, or are they comfortable running it as it has been run over all those years, where away supporters have been handfuls that go to these matches, and it doesn't really matter? Now we're talking about quite large numbers, you know, 2,000 Wrexham fans yesterday travelled into Nottingham. What if we'd have behaved like Kings Lynn, if there had been an issue, you know, where we call the match off at 2:00? What happens then? Yeah, I'm not convinced that the National League want to take it any further.
I think you raise a very good point, and I was going to say there, Les, but you've kind of you've absolutely nailed it. I look at Mark Ives, who is the chief exec. You know, the football world's invisible man, as far as I'm concerned. There's a guy, and I don't wish to denigrate him. The chairman is from, I believe, he's had a lifetime's association with Bognor Regis Town. Now, I'm not dismissing Bognor Regis, okay, not at all. But if you're looking, like you've just said, to level up because of the large number of professional teams, you should be having people used to operating and holding senior positions with professional full-time football clubs, not Bognor Regis Town, because it is so difficult then to understand the operation of a professional football club compared to a non-league football club. They are totally different entities. They're totally different. One is a profession, the other is amateur. And I don't use the phrase amateur to be derogatory, but it is not a full-time occupation. The players do something else and train 2 or 3 nights a week. It's totally different from 80 to 90% of the National League clubs who have professional salaried employees and football playing staffs. And I think you've got to level up, not level down.
Yeah.
We'll see whether it happens. Gary Morphus, there needs to be minimum requirements to be promoted from Conference North and South. The National League is not very good, but the lower teams in these leagues are less than amateurs. Gary Wardle, I don't see the incentive for the National League when the quality of the league will not be affected. No matter how amateur they are, the league quality is improving due to from EFL relegation. But I think it's a fair point that you make, Gary, but then you have to move with the times. Yeah, you have to move with the times. Gary, there are minimum standards, says Andrew Blatherwick. The problem is the standards are not what former Football League clubs are used to and expect. Here's the danger, Gary, to your point. If the National League does not move sufficiently with the times, you take a look at whether the Football League pull the drawbridge up. Because at the minute, the National League should be demonstrating that they are effectively a third division. There is then a stronger case, and you are more likely to get favourable consideration from the Football League to expand to to expand to 4 divisions, not 3. Whereas if you fall out the abyss, what do? The clubs in the Football League say there's no point having all this promotion. Far from having an extra place, will actually make it only one place to come up because the league below is so Mickey Mouse. So I think that's kind of why you have to move with the pyramid and be dragged up. Anyway, that's, we often get round to the National League on that level. I just want to develop a little bit more, and I'll be interested to see how many of us own up to the fact we didn't want the game playing, because I think at least 2/3 of our fan base did not want to play that game. A lot of people are now saying, "Oh yeah, right decision, yeah." And you may argue that it's the right decision because we won. Had we lost, it was the wrong decision. And I think there's a lot of that. How you know Ian better than most. You have a role within the club, Les. Were you surprised at all by Notts' stance or not?
No, not having spoken with Ian, as I say, several times, his ambitions, his squad of players, the group that he's put together, 22 players, 2 vying for each position, lone players coming in where there's an injury, and each player, those vying for the positions are equally as good. Hopefully that's what he's trying to achieve. And I think if one comes out, he can quite happily put another one in. I wasn't too sure about the subs bench yesterday, but
hey, were you on it? COVID, you'd have been there.
Yeah, the side that he put out, I didn't have any qualms about it. You still don't know how they're going to perform, but by all accounts, it went pretty well.
That's an understatement, Les. That's an understatement. Max Seth, I hold my hands up. I didn't want the game to go ahead. Ian Birchinall, I did want it on, but I discussed with friends before kickoff, and it was 60-40 game called off.
There's maybe some other considerations as well that we're not discussing. This, if we go back a couple of years, maybe a number of clubs were falling behind with matches through COVID issues. I think probably a little bit later than this, and then they decided that the teams will get promoted on points per games played, all of that, So if we fall behind on number of games played and we can't get them played, then that could be a consideration that maybe clubs are thinking about. We better keep playing here. No?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was just reading a couple of the messages. Gary Morphus, who went to Greenwood School. Happy New Year to Paul, my old schoolmate, and Les, my schoolboy hero. I think he's a year younger. He might be the same year as me from Greenwood. Ian Birchinall, here you go. The Magpie Flocker outing force. What time do you arrive at Dover Station, Paul? Offer of a lift if it's too much for you. Going up that hill. Hey, I'll do it if it kills me. Last time I went to Dover, believe it or not, I'd flown in from Qatar, Doha, on the morning of the game. So I must be the only person ever to go and watch Dover at the Crabble or whatever it's called, having just flown in from Doha. It felt bloody cooler at Dover. I have to say. What else have we got here? Ian Birchner. My argument for playing yesterday before kickoff was I trusted IB to put out a good starting 11. Wrexham are likely to be stronger with signings if we delayed game and didn't want too many games in backlog. I think whichever way you look at it, I think it was a very, very, very brave decision. Now, if you were being really, really, really cynical, which I won't be, because we obviously didn't know the players that were affected by COVID. Now, if a Palmer, a Wootton, a Cameron have got COVID, I don't honestly know whether we would have played it, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. The club made a decision and it's worked. And for the points you've raised, Les, as well, if this now doesn't give us a tonic, if this doesn't now give us a fillip, this is the best chance we have had this season to now rack up a really good run, because every player has got to be thinking, right, brilliant. I saw Kel Roberts put a tweet out, Ed Francis, having a dig back at all the our anonymous numpties, proving the doubters wrong. There's clearly a great spirit among all the players. But that result, you tell me, Les, you've played the game professionally, has to be a fantastic platform now, doesn't it?
It's just so wonderful, as I say, I think back to my times, all that group of players would have gone in that dressing room after the game absolutely over the moon. Roll on, Dover, let's go and play them now. They're ready to play. That's the feeling that you have. You can't wait for the next game. It just goes to show the positivity in that group, that they've lost couple of key players, shall we say, game winners in Roberts and Rodriguez. They've gone into a game against what were Wrexham, third in the league at the time, and they've gone and put 3 goals past them and won the game. Wonderful, new guys, got new faces come in, probably had to tweak a little here and there, and they've done it, and that is just a wonderful feeling. I would love to have been in that dressing room at the end of the game to share that feeling when they all came in, that belief that they had that team could go out there and win that game. And having one thing that we haven't mentioned, they went a goal down after 5 minutes, and that was that's a real challenge then when you've got some new players in there. But they roll the sleeves up, as I'm told from my sons who were watching the game, and they got into the game and fully justified the win. Could have scored some more goals.
Centre forwards union, Kyle Wootton got a brace, 4th top scorer in the league now. He's out of contract at the end of the season. I think, as I've tried to explain to people before, Notts hold all the cards for him to stay this season. Yeah. Even if he signs a pre-contract somewhere else, not for a minute saying he would, but Notts hold the cards. If they say Kyle Wootton is not going to move, we're not sanctioning a move, he is with us till the end of the season. How important is Kyle, do you think, to this team and going for top spot?
I have to say that every game that I've watched this year, Kyle has done an outstanding job. When it's been backs to the wall, he's still battling to get hold of that ball, hold it up, bring players into play. And as I said early in this season, I felt he wasn't being utilised enough. I felt we could have got the ball up to him earlier. But as I say, speaking with Ian, it's things that they were working at. And watching recent games, I do feel that has started to kick in now, that they are getting balls into the box for him. He's getting in there. He is a major asset to Notts County Football Club. Not just this season, he was last season and before. he feels a lot for the club. He's very proud to wear that black and white shirt. He wants to go out there and do well. He's vice captain. He's shouting encouragement on the pitch to those players. He wants to do it. I don't know, should a championship club come in for him? In my position, I mean, I stayed at the club, and at the end of it all, there's a time when somebody says to you, "Sit down, son. We've signed somebody else to play in your position. We don't want you anymore." So you have to remember that side of it as well, that you get replaced. So, no, it would have to be something amazing to move Kyle away from Notts County Football Club. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally think, as this is an individual viewer as a fan, I don't think you can countenance cashing in on some form of lower transfer fee in this January window. I just don't think you can. I think it's massively false economy. What is the price on the club? Getting promotion to the Football League. The best chance you have got of achieving that has to be with Kyle Wootton, not without him. And I think Kyle is a level-headed guy. He's part of a very tightly knit group, and he is absolutely within his rights, and it's absolutely fine. He doesn't have to sign a new contract. He can take stock and evaluate his options at the end of the season. And for me, clearly, if you're Kyle, you're going to be thinking, the best chance you've got of me staying and wanting to stay at Notts County Football Club is getting promotion. So if he stays with the club for the next 6 months, that gives you the best chance of going up, and you reevaluate the situation at the end of the summer. And if Kyle wanted to go, that will be entirely down to him. He's done his job. End of the day, 3 seasons, he's got over 50 goals, nearly 1 in 2. Not many have done better than that. He's done his job and has earned the right to choose where he wants to move on next. If you stay up, I believe he's moved in locally in Nottingham, in not too distant future, has moved in, then he can have a more serious discussion as a Football League player with Notts County Football Club. So for me, it's a no-brainer. But, I'm not the one, unless we forget here, that's had to fund the club, as Alexander and Christoph Reitz have had to do, to the tune of £9 million so far. Max Seth says, I can't think of a player in the National League who's as complete as Kyle. You have your typical ST, but they all lack something. Kyle is a complete striker, in my opinion. Someone was asking, and I'd actually made a note of this right at the start of the show, because I had to do a bit of research on this, and I was talking with Lee Curtis yesterday about how would you get a game called off? Yeah, and I was going to invite James Rowe on here. Obviously, I wasn't, but so I was talking with Lee about this. So this is what happens, and Nick G has Paul Smith, 1 or 2 just coming in. Okay, the magic number is 14. So in the Football League, they have adopted a rule that you have to have less than 14 players fit and available before you can get a game postponed. To be fair to the National League, they have adopted that protocol. So it's 14 players. Lower than 14, you can apply for a postponement. However, people kind of get confused and think all the play only is applicable for COVID. It's not. So technically, if you only had 18 players and 5 of them had COVID, that takes you down to 13. Clearly, it's off. If you had 24 players and only had 4 with COVID, but 7 were injured, you could still get the game off. And this, I think, is where clubs, let us say, can be creative, because it's not about a medical certificate for COVID. It's the total number of players that you have available. So Forest have been quite transparent in their announcement yesterday when their game with Barnsley, scheduled for today, was postponed. They said it was a combination of COVID and injuries. So I think if you remember when Ian was talking about we could probably get the game postponed, it wasn't necessarily we got 9 players with COVID. We've got injuries. Ruben is suspended. So you add all those up. And if that comes to below 14, then you can seek a postponement. It is not the total number of COVID incidents you have. It's the aggregated number of unavailable players that you have. And if it takes it below 14, you can then apply for a postponement. Do you understand that, Les?
Just before you move on from there then, Paul,
yeah.
What if those 14 players didn't contain a goalkeeper?
I imagine the club would leak it to the press, and the Football League will be embarrassed into calling it off. If you remember, Chris Wilder at Middlesbrough had all sorts of problems trying to get a game called off for Middlesbrough, and they were going around trying to recall all the loan players, because the league had originally said to Middlesbrough, well, actually, you've got 19 players. You know, the fact that 5 of them aren't at your club and are on loan elsewhere, you know, try and recall them, which clearly isn't particularly practical. So I guess in answer to your question, Les, you'd like to think common sense will kick in. And if you haven't got a professional goalkeeper on your books, then you wouldn't be required to play the game.
Yeah.
You know, hey, maybe that's what James Rowe did. Maybe he just said, we've got all our 3 goalkeepers have all got COVID, so we can't play the game. I don't know. You know, but look, Les, you know, and I know how it works in the game, right? Yeah. Clubs are creative, right? Clubs, they look at the rule book, don't they, and work out how do we get around it. But hopefully that tidies it up, because until I was talking to Lee yesterday, I wasn't sure myself. Yeah, I thought, how does this work? But it's aggregated number of unavailable players, of which COVID can be a part, but does not have to be an entirety. Mr. Neil H.O., how is proof given to the league with regards to injuries postponing a fixture? No doubt it is the physio. Secretary submits a report. Clearly, yes, that is open to abuse. Ian Birchinall, Les, we would have been okay. We would have had Doyler. There you go. Paul Smith, any news on possible dates for rearranged? No. I mean, I would hope they will be fixed up sooner rather than later. Nick G. Paul, if someone came with an offer of 250k, would not take it. I presume, well, I don't know. I presume you're talking about Wootton. I would be absolutely staggered if anyone offered even 100 grand for a player that's out of contract in the summer. And you know what? Easy to say, because it ain't my money. But if I was owner and someone offered 250 grand for Carl Wootton in January, and therefore he goes, unless you knew, right? Unless you got a deal, right, with Chesterfield that you could get Chimanga or something or other, yeah, something as rock solid as that, then no, I wouldn't entertain it. I wouldn't entertain it. You know, it's a debate for another time, because things are going very well at the minute. I've seen 1 or 2 people talking about, some fans are of a view, we as supporters need to get used to a model whereby we sell our best players so the club can become sustainable. For me, the club only becomes sustainable, and even then I use the word very loosely, by being in the Football League. You normally don't get anywhere in football by selling your best players. For me, you sign players to get yourself promoted. Yeah, that's why you buy them. Whatever gives you the best chance of getting promoted. And I think that about wraps it all up. One thing I just want to finish on, Les, Mr. Patterson's come back. Very popular with fans. What's your take on him coming back?
I was over the moon when I heard it last week. I thought he did a really good job. coming in when Sam was out, and we got into a good run, didn't we? And then he went back. Sam's come in, and he's done equally well. So I was, shall I say, a bit surprised that he got selected yesterday above Sam. But he's come in and proved the reason why. Fantastic penalty save. I like him. He comes out and he commands that 6-yard box, catches everything in there. He's a gifted lad. He likes to play football, probably sometimes a bit too much for me. He makes my heart bounce a bit at times, but that's the modern way. I think in due time, he'll be a top goalkeeper.
Yeah, well, he's a Magpie Circle sponsored goalkeeper, so we're glad to have him back. Andrew Blatherwick says, if that's the case, this is because of 14, Paul, then the National League should make teams produce medical records for injured players. Failing that, the league should tell clubs that the list of players missed 2 more games. It's one thing in a rule book, it's enforcement, isn't it? You know, we've already established that the National League is run by one man and a dog. Okay, so how are the National League going to enforce this when decisions have to be made in a very short time frame? Are you going to send, executives along to each club to independently assess? You're not, are you? Let's be honest. The National League don't have a rule book which says the referee don't have to arrive until 90 minutes before a game. So if you can't get your referees to turn up on the morning of a game to check things out and avoid things like the Kings Lynn game, because, as I understand this, Kings Lynn didn't tell anyone. If they'd said there was a slight doubt, the referee would have been there at 9:30 in the morning. He'd have called it off at 10 o'clock, and none of us would have been travelling there. Now, that's common sense, but
that happened in the past, Paul, and local referees were called in, yes, weren't they? If there was, right. And if there was any doubt, then they called the main referee, said that this could be a problem. You better get down here. So you had time. I don't get. There's no way that Kings Lynn have got an excuse for me. Somebody should have been looking at that pitch. That pitch hasn't changed from weather from the day before.
Exactly. Wasn't playable on Christmas Day. Probably wasn't playable on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Right. And they've tried to hope they can force it through. That's, that for me, I think.
In the chairman's words, 5 years ago, they played on a pitch worse than that, as if that was satisfactory.
But that's not an excuse, is it? That's not.
No, it's not at all. Not at all.
Did they start the game and it belted down, for 30 minutes? I can remember a game. I don't know if you had it, Les. Waterlogged pitch in August when we were playing AEK Athens.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one? Game started fine.
Wonderful first half on a perfect pitch. And
then literally
the pitch was flooded.
Meadow Lane did it for about half an hour and the whole place was flooded. Clearly, events of that type, you can't fans understand that, but I think we all know Kings Lynn was a little bit different. Just going back to the Pato, because that debates sparks quite a lot of debate. Gary Morphis, my old school chum, who tells me he was in the same year. I just look a lot older than him now. Says, hang on, I've lost it. The eyes have gone now. If you look where Patterson plays when the team goes forward in comparison to Slocum, that's why we play better. That's interesting because I was actually going to make the same point. I was watching Pato yesterday and other games. He reminds me a lot, he's a poor man's Edison. Because it was funny, I noticed exactly the same thing, Gary. When the ball is in the opposition half and we've got it, Pato's starting position is not the edge of the 18-yard box. It's not 10 yards outside our 18-yard. It's 2/3 of the way up. He is literally 10, 15 yards from the halfway line. You have a look next time. When the ball is in the opposition half, just look where Pato is. He is 10, 15 yards from the halfway line. That's his starting position. And if you notice, Wrexham did try a couple of times, didn't they, to go for the long 70-yard shot over him. They were both useless. One was from the kickoff, and the other one, left-footed midfielder, pinged it, and it nearly hit the corner flag. So I'm guessing other clubs do take a little look at that as well. But absolutely. His starting position is incredible. I mean, can you imagine Barry Watling or Eric McManus doing that and what Jimmy Cyril would have done, Les?
He's playing as a defender. If the ball gets cleared from their box, that he's in a position to trap it, isn't he, and get the ball going again. That you do leave yourself a little bit exposed for that one over the top and into the net as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I know a lot of people are very, very pleased to see him back. I'm not going to say too much, but we obviously had a few players this year, some of our sponsored players, and let's just see what we can and can't do with Mr. Patterson in the not too distant future. Andrew Blatherwick, 5 years ago, Kings Lynn were in the Southern League at Step 4. I know we are not being derogatory about Kings Lynn. What they have done is phenomenal. And whatever your personal views on Stephen Cleeve, you have to say as a chairman, he has presided over a very successful period for Kings Lynn Football Club. No one, least of all me, is going to criticise him or throw him under the bus as a bad chairman because of what he's achieved overall at the club. But clearly, whatever the conduct of Kings Lynn in this postponement, it doesn't smell very nice, and I think they should be held accountable for it, and also the bigger picture, so that other clubs' supporters aren't subjected to those quite ridiculous wastes of time and money on days such as Boxing Day. Max Seth, poor man's Edison. Edison is a poor man's Pato. Gary Wardle, Eric McManus, what a keeper. Yeah, I used to love Eric. Yeah, great keeper, Eric. Isn't his wife a fortune teller, Les?
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it? I thought people were winding me up when they told me that.
No, she that was a party piece when we were out having a drink. Let me have your hand and whoops. And she would read your fortune. I don't think she got very far with me, but anyway.
Say for you? Did she ever predict you'd get a hat-trick for Notts County?
It wasn't normally football predictions, more about your life.
Yeah, and a great one to finish on. And this is, I was about to say this. I mean, I love Raddy, and Raddy is the best goalkeeper I've seen in a Notts shirt. Cyprus ref. Remember League Cup game at the baseball ground. It's midweek. Derby had won the league not long before. It was Eric v Derby. Quite right. I think we got a draw or something or other. It was one of the best individual goalkeeping displays I have ever seen in my life. Were you playing in that one, Les? Or
no, I'd left then.
Had you left? Honestly, the number of actual saves that Eric produced was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Anyway, right. We've gone on a bit. It's been a bumper show tonight. We've had loads of questions and answers. Thank you for taking time and trouble to listen to us. Leslie, thank you for battling through COVID. In true Notts County traditions, COVID didn't stop Ian Birchnell putting out only 14 players against Wrexham yesterday. COVID has not stopped you in your tracks either. Thank you very much. We heard the cuckoo clock, so the cuckoo clock is still going loud and proud. And we wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
And I'm not quite sure when. What's the next game you're going to be able to see? What's the next game after Dover?
It's the home match in the cup against Eastleigh, isn't it? The following weekend
in the trophy, isn't it? Well, we hope you are feeling all well and better for tonight. Thank you, everyone, tonight. Thank you to RobRyanRed and Nathan Salt as well. It was good to get a considered opinion from him. We will be back hopefully later this week, depending on how many more guests we can dredge up with COVID ahead of Dover. I shall be at Dover. Look forward to seeing you. And thank you, and we will catch up again in the not too distant future. Take care for now. Bye-bye.